the Ultimate Assistant podcast with Bonnie and Vicky. Hello, everyone. I'm Vicky Sokol-Evans.
And I'm BonnieLow-Kramen.
Hey. Hey, Bon. Okay, this is a first for us. Wherever. Tell everybody where we are.
We are in Johannesburg, South Africa. In a million years, I never thought that sentence would leave my mouth. Did you, Vicky?
No, not at all. This is amazing that we're here. Why are we here?
We are speakers at the Executive Secretary Live Conference run by Lucy Brazier, and this is conference number 6 for Lucy, and you've spoken at 6 of them. I've been at 5 of them, and they're all over the world. So it's so exciting to have all of these assistants from all over the world, not just from Africa. It's an amazing group. The power of them.
We have some from New Zealand,
Paris, Swaziland,
yes, all over Africa,
Pretoria, words that
Europe.
You know, here I thought Cape Town was right around the corner, and it's a 2-hour plane ride.
Apparently, it's not.
Hey, and now I know that Johannesburg is 5,000 feet above sea level. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah,
I would have not expected it at all.
I'm very proud of myself. I'm not like running out of breath every second. But you know, in our effort to bring to our listeners the world's experts on subjects, we've taken this opportunity to grab a hold of one of our favorite people. One of the speakers who happens to be speaking at Executive Secretary Live. She's done so several times.
And by the way, we're on location here at the conference, so you're going to hear lots of people in the background, so hopefully you can hear us. It's gorgeous here, by the way.
It certainly is. Here by the pool in Johannesburg. Our listeners have gotten used to the idea that Vicky and I work to bring the world's leading experts on various workplace topics to this podcast. And now that we're here at ExecSec Live, we are so fortunate to have asked Victoria Darragh to join us for a podcast about her expertise. Which happen to be there are so many things that you're an expert in, but you happen to be so knowledgeable about internal assistant networks in companies, and also about the value of professional associations, which Vicky and I are certainly big fans of. So we would love to welcome you to the podcast, Vic.
Thank you.
Vic is one of our fellow speakers here at the conference, and so we've shared the stage with you several times.
Many times, yeah.
In London, Dubai,
and here. I was the first person to bring an American over to a British PA conference, which was Bonnie, and that opened a massive gateway for us in the UK and gave us that tie that we needed with the USA and we'd wanted for many years. So thanks to Bonnie, we've now got some great gateways and contacts in the USA.
Well, I'm so pleased that, and Vic, I can tell you publicly now, I'm so grateful you didn't tell me that fact until I arrived in London. You didn't tell me that I was the first American to be at a conference. And so I learned that, and it felt all of a sudden like even more pressure. But it actually, that conference, the Haze conference in 2012, was one of the highlights of my career.
And it opened the British PA's minds up, especially working on an international platform and learning about assistants from other countries as well, and realising actually some of the challenges are exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Culture aside. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay.
For those listeners who don't know who you are.
I'm a former executive assistant now. I've literally just given up my career 2 months ago.
How many years?
I started at the age of 16, so 16 years exactly.
Wow.
I spent, and it was my dream job. At the age of 12, I wanted to be a PA. And so I went off to secretarial college at 16 and got my diploma and all my skills, and then I set off to be an office junior, and then I worked my way up the traditional way, secretary, PA, and then EA. I became an EA at the age of 21, which was unheard of in London at the time, but I was given a fabulous opportunity by a Canadian female CEO of a charity, and she basically opened my world up. 5 wonderful years I spent with her, and I learnt a lot from her as well. And I've worked across all the sectors, public sector, not-for-profit, and then I finished my career in the corporate world with Haze PLC, which is the world's leading specialist recruitment agency, and that's where I went on to set up the internal PA network. Now, prior to joining Haze, I knew very early on in my career that external networking was really important for me. It was vital because I was a PA on my own in an organisation. I needed to be around other assistants. Internal networking didn't really feature for assistants, certainly in the UK then. It was more women's networks, ethnic minority networks, LGBT networks. There was no internal networks for assistants that I was aware of, and I hadn't had any exposure.
And where were you working at the time when you were thinking about this?
The Business Disability Forum.
Okay.
So, as I said, I was the only PA. I met a PA from another corporate company, and she suggested to come out networking, which I did, and it changed my career big style. Really, it had a massive impact. It changed the way I worked, the way I spoke and presented myself, and life did start to get a little bit crazy. And then I joined Haze, the corporate world, not really knowing what I was walking into. I'd never worked for a corporate with thousands of employees, and I had all these high expectations, and what I was most particularly looking forward to was having other assistants around me, people who understood the job, being able to be with them, and unfortunately it just didn't sort of pan out like that when I first joined the company.
So you went from being the only PA or EA to how many assistants were there?
50 PAs in the UK business, and with another 20 PAs globally in the different Haze countries. So to me, I thought that I had this massive support framework immediately upon joining Haze, and what I found actually was very different. As with any big corporate company, the departments are quite siloed off, and the assistants definitely were. There was no sort of joined up thinking. It was really difficult to work with the other assistants. Everyone was quite protective of their area. There was definitely not any networking, and actually Haze does a lot in the PA industry, sort of sponsoring awards and what have you, and our own PAs they wasn't actually aware of what was going on the business side. And so I realised I was finding it actually quite difficult to do my job when I first got to Haze, because I didn't have these relationships, the cohesive relationships with the Haze assistants, and they didn't have it with each other as well. Some of them were really close and got on well, worked really well together, but as a group it was just too siloed off. And I think for me the most important thing was that the perception of the role within our company as well, it wasn't great. People didn't really see the value of us and what we were adding to the bottom line.
So did that affect your morale as assistants?
Well, unfortunately, when I joined Haze, the recession hit a month later. So we had the collapse of Lehman Brothers, and that rocked not just the UK but the world. And so morale was already getting fairly low anyway, but then we go into a global recession, which for many of us was our first recession. And yeah, it wasn't great. There was no budget for training for anyone, let alone assistants. There was just not much development. I think everybody was worried about losing their jobs, so it kind of started to manifest itself really into something a little bit negative, but it was just what was going on in the world back then. And I kind of saw a prime opportunity. I thought, do you know what, I've got to get these assistants together at Haze, because actually power by numbers. Yes, there's no budget, we've got no money, but I think I can help change the perception of how we're seen in the company. I also saw the recession as a golden opportunity for us to really get out our skill set and say how we were delivering to the company during a global recession and crisis. And what I discovered actually when I started going around talking to the Haze PAs individually was that they were making huge cost savings for the company in terms of procurement. We had this extraordinary skill set that nobody really knew about, because we weren't very good at telling people within our own company. So what I did, I started off, spoke to our group HR director. He was fully supportive. They knew all about me when they took me on, so I think they were kind of hoping that I was going to do something. And he said, yeah, get out and do it. I've got no budget for you, but I'm happy for you to do what you need to do with the PAs. And so I interviewed them individually at first, or had coffee with them, just to find out how they were feeling.
How many people are we talking about?
It was over 20 at first. So I started
you were having
with
20 coffees.
Yeah, coffees or phone calls, just to find out how they were feeling, how they came into the PA role themselves, how long they'd been at Haze, what did they feel about the company 10 years ago to how they felt now.
Did they know you were trying to do this at all? You're just okay.
I sort of dripped the idea out, because it's important. You can't just set up an internal network unless there's buy-in from the assistants themselves.
Right.
And actually, sometimes there isn't going to be buy-in because they don't really understand what you're trying to do. So for me, I had to explain my background, and I said, you do know there's this big wide world of PA networks out there, magazines, events, and they didn't know anything, and they were really excited. And every meeting and coffee I had, I could feel the palpitations of excitement. Actually, they were really eager to learn. They wanted to network with each other. They wanted to be a strong group, and we wanted to show the company what we were made of and what we were giving back to them. And as I said, how we were adding to the bottom line.
So it goes to Bonnie. What are the 4 things you say assistants really want? So list out, because you just spoke about it during the
top things that, as I travel, as Vicki and I travel all around the world, the top 4 things that assistants want are, and in this order: respect, appreciation, fair compensation, and a sense of their value in the company.
Absolutely.
And I just see all 4 of those. Well, the compensation, we're not talking about that just yet, but I see that right now as you're talking.
When those things are in place, those are the companies that have strong employee retention.
Yeah.
When those things are not in place,
High morale.
and there are too many companies where the culture is one of disrespect rather than respect, and where they don't understand the role.
Yeah.
Coupled by the fact that a lot of assistants, as you say, are not quick to share with others their talents and skills.
Yeah.
So they're hoping, most assistants hope that somebody's going to notice it, and that they're going to be recognized. But everybody's moving so fast these days that unfortunately assistants see it as bragging, don't they?
Yeah,
And tooting their own horn, and it's seen as a bad thing.
Well, I mean, look at just one example of the cost savings that one PA provided for their company, and if they're able to share what they did to save the company money, and 5 other PAs can do the exact same thing, there's a tangible benefit from being able to network together and share that information. So anyway.
All part of my research, actually, and you touched on something there, Bonnie, was when I was going around having coffees and doing my phone calls with the Haze PAs individually, I asked them a very honest question, and I said I wouldn't name them in terms of their answer. Are you actively looking for another job right now? And what I discovered is over 50% of our PAs were. So that gave me a golden ticket to go back to HR and say, do you know what, we're going to lose over 50% of our assistants in the next year. This is how much it's going to cost to replace them in terms of recruitment fees, but I can't put a price on what they know and the knowledge that's actually in their heads about the company.
That's right.
And the average Haze PA had a level of service of 10 years, so you know, some of them have been there 20, 25 years, so to lose those people would have just probably run into millions in the end, and that knowledge, and having to retrain new people. And of course, actually, in a recession, is you want to retain your good staff, and especially great assistants as well. You can't afford to lose a great assistant. So that was a good thing for me, going back to HR and being able to, you know, give them that statistic, which did shock them a bit, because they just made an assumption that everybody was happy and yeah, they're all la-di-da, but it just wasn't
because
like
if
that.
nobody's complaining, they think there's no problem.
Yeah, right.
And what we have found, that even the most seasoned assistants, it's easy to think that, oh, it's the 20-somethings, the 30-somethings who are reluctant to say anything about problems. But what I'm finding, which is scary, which is what, you know, is such a big part of the training Vicki and I are doing, is that even seasoned assistants are reluctant to speak to the issues.
Absolutely. And another thing I did, and I would recommend doing to people, so it was really interesting. I didn't expect to come out with this list, but when I was having my coffees again, I asked each PA that I spoke to, what is your greatest strength in terms of your skills being a PA at Haze? And what I discovered is that every single one of us had a different strength. So I found myself writing out this list saying, do you know what, Laura's brilliant at technology. I know I'll be able to call on her. And then, you know, Liz was great at board meetings, preparing for board meetings, packs. She was absolutely efficient at that. Sarah was fantastic at event management, had all these tips and tricks. And then I realised I was actually creating a directory of not only the Haze PAs, but their skills. And if you sort of publish that, you can know who to lean on. So if you're having a crisis at work,
That's awesome.
I can go to this list and say, well, actually, she's the best PA to approach for that problem. And that's what we found very quickly after setting up the network. It was a huge help.
And people referred to it.
Yeah.
Assistants referred to it.
Yeah.
And this whole idea, I mean, I share, and I give you full credit, you know, as we go around the world, to say that it's so simple.
Yeah.
It's so simple.
It is, yeah. It's just a
requires
conversation.
asking the question.
Yeah, and it is quite hard for assistants to blow their own trumpet, and they do have to. It's important to know who's good at what, so that if you do get a crisis, then you know who to turn to. But what I did to set up the network is I said, okay guys, I think we really need this. I'm worried about morale, but I think if we get together, let's just have an initial meeting in head office over lunchtime. I'm going to get in an external speaker, so I presented on what an internal network could look like, and I'd never run one before, so it was just the ideas that I had. Some of the stuff that you do in external networking can be used for an internal network, and that was my thing. Present out, see if the bite's there with them all together. One thing I discovered, they were very nervous about being in a room together, so they lacked confidence just being in the room with their peers. They were very quiet in that first meeting, or lunch and learn as they then became to be called. But it was interesting. I wanted to open their minds up to the external world to give them some inspiration. So I asked this extraordinary senior level assistant. She was PA to the chairman of BP, and for many years she started as a filing clerk, a one-day temp job, and ended up there 20 years and PA to the chairman. So I asked her to come in and present on her career story, and actually it tipped the group over the edge. It created this bite to want to learn and develop and network with each other. And after the first lunch and learn, or it was more of a meeting then, they said, right, we really want this, when's the next one? So we did the first meeting. We had no budget, so the PAs that came from across the UK had to ask their own bosses for budget to travel down. And it was fine.
How many did you have at that first meeting?
Probably just over 20. And some of the PAs were reluctant to come to the network at first. I think it was nervousness. What is this all about? What is Vic trying to do here? I'm used to my own way of working. I don't want to change. A lot of different factors.
Fear of the unknown.
Yeah, absolutely. And little did we know that it was going to explode for us in quite a big way, and very, very positive way as well. So we started setting up more meetings, but actually we didn't want to call them meetings because that's all we do all day. Well, part of our job is to set up meetings.
Right.
The terminology just makes it sound very boring. And so I sort of brainstormed with a couple of them saying, well, what should we call this? Because it's not a meeting, it's networking, learning and developing. We had a good friend from Barclays Bank with us, and she said, well, what about lunch and learn? And I was like, you know what, I love it. It's quirky, but it does what it says on the tin. You know, you're networking internally with your peers, so we always started with a quick catch-up, what's going on within the company, how is everyone, we're feeling good, if there was any problems, let's get them on the table, share them out. So we always encouraged the network. That was the first piece we started with, and then I always did a presentation, quick few slides on what was going on in the external world. So did you know that Haze PA and Secretary was involved in this, or did you know Lucy Brazi's launched a new conference, there's a new network out there? So right from the start, we were constantly updating them on what's going on in the big wide world. And then we'd always get a speaker in. And actually, you know, they might ask for a subject that they want, or we'd just say, actually, as a group, we do need a bit more help on this. And
what kind of topics did you have for your...
Okay, we did emotional intelligence. We did, we turned a lunch and then into a whole day of technology training, because we realised, actually, that was the biggest thing for us at Haze. One of the extraordinary things that Haze did during the recession was decided, whilst other companies were cutting back, Haze made a big investment into technology at the company. And we realised that actually as assistants we were quite behind with what was going on, so we did a lot on that. And encouraging each other to share our tricks and tips as well when we learned something new. How to successfully lead the partnership with your executive, managing difficult personalities.
So sometimes you would have a guest speaker and sometimes you wouldn't? Or
I know we always had a guest
always
speaker.
had a guest
Yeah, very seldom did we not have one. Maybe one or two occasions where we concentrated on the company. We went through a big rebrand at Haze, so we actually got in our marketing and brand department to come in and tell us what that means. We offered up our services to be brand ambassadors and to help them roll this out across the company, which we did. So we took all their templates, everything they taught us to do. We then went out and trained the staff on how to do it, which it was
great.
Just incredible. It was really good for us as well. It was great for brand and marketing to have like this really engaged group. Because some people didn't want, and some people didn't want the rebrand because it was changed, but actually we were hungry for it and hungry to help get it out there, and actually I found we were the perfect people to do that because people did listen to us at a local level. So that was one of our big projects. We also got in the HR department that I worked for to come in and sort of pitch to the PAs about what was coming up in the future. and for development, how were our managers being trained, so we could get a bit better understanding of what they were training on and going through, which in turn helped us understand the psychology of leadership a bit more. But we covered a variety of topics. I mean, it was an absolute whirlwind. We also
did the attendance increase each time?
As time went on, and then PAs who were reluctant to be part of it at the beginning, as time went on, they wanted to be part of it.
Right.
And we had another interesting dynamic that some of the bosses stopped their PAs coming at the beginning. Oh, I'm not having my PA do this. No, she's not leaving her desk. And then when it started being talked about around the company, these bosses really had no choice but to release their PAs to come, because it was becoming the odd one out. Okay, so all the PAs are coming and yours isn't. It just wasn't right. And their PAs were missing out. So eventually it very quickly snowballed, and we had this really strong workforce, and we actually found that we gelled really well together. We set up a directory of PAs and a distribution list, and so we could email each other at any time, all the Haze PAs in one go with a problem. We found that helped really well. I actually did record in the first year when we used our directory email group as to when problems were getting at, how quick people were responding.
So what are some of the examples of problems that were solved, potentially instantly because you were all networked together?
Okay, there was, and I wasn't part of the fleet car service at Haze, but we had a big fleet car service. There was a problem with it. It had been changed. I don't know what happened, but some of the directors ended up without cars, and so basically we had to reposition some vehicles around the country. And one of the PAs emailed out about it. She had a response back within 3 minutes and 32 seconds. And
what would have been the situation had you not been networked? I mean, what would have been the process for her?
Probably to go around the houses at Haze, by which I mean contact about 10 different departments to find out who does what when. And it is, even though you work within a big company like Haze and you've got all these departments at your fingertips, you don't know these people, not intricately, to get these sort of responses. But I monitored it throughout the year, the first year, and the average response time was around 4.5 to 5 minutes to get a solution. Yeah, back to a problem.
Right.
So we knew the list was great, absolutely fantastic.
Now, Vic, you weren't doing this alone, right? Because we talked to assistants who they love the idea of creating a PA network, but they're a bit daunted by thinking, oh, do I have to do this alone?
Yeah, so I went to our chairman's PA, Sue. She'd been at the company a very long time, was very experienced. She knew the company inside out. She'd moved the different head offices over the years, and she had a better understanding than I, because I was very new. She had a better understanding than I of the company culture and the history of it over the years, and how to handle certain sensitivities with bosses and PAs. So she was the lifeline for that. We brainstormed together. We had several lunches and coffees and dinners. C came out networking in the external world. She absolutely loved it and could really see the value of it as well. And actually, for us as executive PAs, Sue and I realised another thing in the research that I'd undertaken was that the PAs who don't work in head office, they saw us executive PAs who were supporting the board as sitting in an ivory tower mentality. Well, you're better than us sort of thing, and we really didn't want that. We wanted to be open and accessible to all PAs regardless of what level they were supporting at. So we realised actually, this is a key thing for us. We need to make sure that we're mentoring, passing on our expertise from being senior assistants. So Sue was absolutely brilliant at facilitating all of that. Helping arrange the sessions. We did a lot of brainstorming together and all sorts of creative ideas.
So it takes a team. You need to find people who really care about, who see the possibilities.
Yeah, you do tend to need 1 or 2 people to start it off, and then as the network gets going, you need to include the assistants in it. So, you might ask them, well, do you want to set up the next lunch and learn? Would you like to chair one? Or what about suggesting a speaker? And gradually, little bit by little, they were coming back to us with ideas, and then they started offering to chair the session. So me and Sue were able to sit back and let them. But that was over time and building their confidence, and that was when they felt that they really meant something to the company as well.
Well, let me ask you this question. One of the other common things we hear is that the assistants take the courage, they create the network, but inevitably they get pushback from, not only, you talked about the executive pushing back and saying they didn't want their assistant to come. Some of these assistants are experiencing other peers, fellow PAs, EAs, who choose not to come. They're either afraid of it. What do you, and surely you've encountered that over the years, what do you say to those leaders who are feeling a little discouraged because some of their peers are being negative about it?
Yeah, I think, as you said, Bonnie, it is the fear factor being around your peers. That's definitely there, even though some assistants won't admit it. It is most certainly there. But I was given a bit of advice by my boss at the time, who was the group HR director, and I said to him, some of the assistants don't seem to want this, they're being quite negative about it, what shall I do? And he said to me, do you know what, Vic, don't ever force people into a network. So he said, you keep rolling out with your ideas and the event, and he said they will come to it. He said they will, but they need to come to it in their own time. So you keep including them in all the emails that you send out, inviting them to events. And he said something in those emails is going to pique their interest and is going to tip them over the edge from the fear factor to actually thinking, I want to be part of this, I'm missing out. And that is exactly what happened. I followed his advice to a T and kept them in the loop, and they all did come to it in the end. And even when they couldn't get to sessions, they always asked for the notes and a debrief. And it was really extraordinary.
So at what point do you bring in executive sponsorship? When did you...
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that is really interesting. James had a fantastic relationship, and I knew there was no budget at the start.
James, remind us who James.
So James Cullen was the group HR director for Haze,
Okay.
and my boss, and who I joined to work with. And he was fantastic, very knowledgeable about other networks. He hadn't seen an internal assistant network, so he was really interested to see how it was going to pan out. He was also challenging me, with the lack of budget, to see what I could pull off with no money. And I knew we were going through hard times, and it was fine. And he wanted to give us budget, it just wasn't there. It just wasn't there at that time. So I had great connections before I got to Haze. I was already very well networked in the external world, and this is where the external world can help out an internal world. So I started bringing in some of those contacts, and as I said, opening their minds up to what it means to be a PA and the bigger picture. And it was really important for us actually at Haze to have a bit more of an international vibe, because we were an international company. We had to better understand the cultures we were dealing with internationally, and we were perhaps lacking in that area because we started off as a UK company 40 odd years ago. So I used my black book of contacts, got people to come in, trainers, shared lots of stuff with them, and it was fine to run it free. He did give us a little bit of budget, so that was for our food. We never had to pay for our own lunch, so we got some food in.
It's always a big plus.
Yeah, and every little helps, as I say. And it was fine. I liked the challenge, and that was the great thing about James as a boss. He knew that I was at my strongest when I was being challenged and under pressure. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed setting up with no budget, because I wanted to prove to Haze, well, we can still do this on a shoestring. We don't have to cost you a lot of money to begin with. But I made it clear to James, if I get this off successfully, I do expect budget, and I will pitch to you at the appropriate time. So I think it was about 9 months in, I went to James, presented to him on a report on what had happened so far, what we'd learned, what we were adding to the company, because we changed, the dynamics of the group changed very quickly. They picked up, the confidence levels were picking up very, very widely in a big way, and the directors were noticing this as well. So the Haze PAs were coming out networking externally, they were meeting other people, they were bringing new contacts into the company. So it gave the bite there to get some budget.
New contacts in the company, potential customers or
clients. So when we go to an external networking event, I train the PAs on how to network, how to shake hands, how to present themselves.
Brand ambassador for your company.
Yeah, so that when they're out, they know it doesn't matter whether it's out of working hours. If you've got a badge on that says you represent Haze, you're there on behalf of your company. And so we train them how to network, so that they have the confidence to shake hands, where to wear their badge, etc., etc. So what we did find is they were making amazing connections for the company, and as a sales and people company, you really, really do need that, but actually every company does. So we were starting to see the benefits of that, and I was able to present that in my first business case to James to ask for budget.
Because you're at this point, you're affecting the bottom line by bringing in potential clients.
Yeah, and I had clear examples running all throughout my PowerPoint presentation. I had then emails from other Haze bosses saying, what have you done to my PA? She's changed beyond belief. She's really challenging me. This is great. She's picked me up on some faults, but that's fine. That's great. So actually they were getting a lot stronger individually, but we were as a group as well. And we were making things happen probably 100 times faster.
Okay, so just to get everyone up to speed, we were having coffee out earlier, so you got to kind of be a fly on the wall while we had coffee, and we were talking to Darragh, and so we've moved into a quieter spot to continue the conversation about internal PA networks. And the last thought you had, or Bonnie, did you want to mention?
Yeah, so Vic, you were talking about the importance of executive sponsorship and how you pitched it to James in a very organized way. Talk about executive sponsorship and what that journey is like for the people listening who are thinking, yeah, I want to do that at my company.
Yeah, it is quite scary for most assistants to go and pitch a business case like that, and you do have to go in with some confidence, knowing your facts. But actually HR, you do need to go to HR in the first instance to actually develop the business case to get the statistics you need to put in there. For me, it kind of seemed natural to get it off my boss because he was the group HR director, and under HR falls L&D and training. But I did make a little bit of a mistake really looking back now. It didn't feel like that at the time or for many years, but James, he did fund a lot of our network. So as the years went on, we got more and more budget every year. So as we continued to improve ourselves and our support service was just sort of really fantastic.
The ROI,
yeah,
right? The
yeah.
increased ROI.
Absolutely.
And the conference began with 50 people, but then after how many years it grew to what size?
Yeah. And 250. And that was actually my boss's idea. So something really extraordinary happened to us, and I would say to any assistant setting up networks when they've been going for a little while to get out there and apply for some of the awards, because as an exercise and to benchmark ourselves against other companies, we applied for the PA Employer of the Year for the UK, and this was in 2010, and our network had only been going 11 months at the point of the awards. So we applied for it not thinking that we would win it at all. There was no arrogance there on our part. It was literally just a benchmarking exercise to see who did win it and actually what were we doing that they weren't, vice versa. And we got to the awards, we took a table, and we were in the top 5 up against some huge PLC companies that were bigger than Haze. And what we found on the night was the 2 runners-up were announced, and then they started talking about the winning company, and we knew it was us. They mentioned Lunch and Learn, so we didn't actually hear the rest of what they said because we were screaming with excitement. So on a perfect Friday night in London, we collected this accolade of PA Employer of the Year, and it was the PAs at Haze themselves that turned Haze into an employer of choice. I remember seeing our chairman the Monday after clutching our award, showing it to him, and he just said, "We are so proud of you. This is absolutely extraordinary."
And it happened in 2 years, the difference between 2008 and 2010.
Yeah, less than 2 years.
And so, you pitched not only the network, but then the conference, and when the benefits are seen, it grew from 50 to 250. I mean, the trajectory, it's not unique to just you either, because now you've seen it happening all over the world. You started to say something about a mistake you made, though.
Oh, yes, sorry. On the board sponsorship, I would say to assistants now, which I didn't do until very recently, is that you do need more than one board sponsor for the money stuff and getting that budget, because every boss has an expiration date at some point, whether they retire or they move on to another company. And I didn't do that. We were riding high with the network. I didn't think about what would happen if James had left. Would we still have a network? And actually the unthinkable happened. James left, and his successor came in and didn't want the network at all, didn't want to fund it, and all our funding was shut off virtually overnight. So we had sort of 6-7 years of this fantastic network going back to exactly square one. Back in 2008-9, where we had no budget, and we refer to it in the UK as bed borrower still, and that's what we were back to again. So it was quite excruciating for us at first, but I said to the Haze PAs, it doesn't matter, it'll be fine, we'll get there again, we've just got to go through the whole process again. Had I had my time again, could go back to 2008, I would have not only pitched to James for budget, but possibly other key directors, and made sure, that when he did leave, that we had somebody to step in and continue providing that budget for us, because for me, it was having to justify ourselves all over again to somebody who didn't know us. And I could understand part where he was coming from, because he had no knowledge of our network, our group. He hadn't been there from the inception. He was a new boss, different ideas. So it was quite negative at first for us, but I sort of pulled the Haze PA straight and said, it's not the end, it's fine, we've just got to go through it again. But as I said, if I had my time again, I would have gone back and brought in more people, spread the cost out a bit more. Because the key thing with Haze is that I brought in a lot of directors into the concept of the network. They got it, they understood it, but not many of them were happy to open the wallets and get the money out. So yeah, I'd absolutely say to assistants, you do need 2 or 3 actually board sponsors, and we're seeing this happening at a lot of internal networks now.
So Vic, can you tell us what the investment would be? Is it per PA? Do you have a cost per PA?
Yeah, so I'd cost us out as a group and then divide that by the amount of PAs. I think the first conference we did ended up between 20 and 30 British pounds per person, which was nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. As the years grew on, obviously we got more investment. We got more investment off the back of winning the Employer of the Year award. So the unique thing with that was that we got a lot of internal PR, and a lot of people say, internal PR? Well, why would you bother? But actually, when we won that award, we stuck it all up over the intranet, and there was mail shots that went out about it. Look what this group of extraordinary women have done at Haze. They've turned us into an employer of choice. So all around the Haze globe, as we used to call it, we had lovely messages from Haze India, Haze Russia, Haze Australia, saying, oh, we're going to replicate that for another population in our country. So the internal PR is really, really important. You need to have that to get the knowledge out there.
And people want to feel pride in the company.
They do. And to have us up on the front page, having won that award. So the external part of that was that when the magazine that gave us the award printed more stuff about our network, we got quite a lot of external PR as well. And I remember our PR department saying, this is really extraordinary. We're getting external PR off the back of your network. And then we were getting requests into the company. Well, what are you up to? What are you doing? Can you come and teach us how to do it? It wasn't just fellow PAs from other companies. It was some bosses as well. Contacted my boss. Oh, can your PA come out and help our team? And so it was this real knock-on effect, this simple award, and then doing a bit of internal and external PR. And that's how it exploded. So James said to me, okay, Vic, for 2011, I'm going to double your budget for the conference. I nearly screamed, but I had to be professional. Oh, thank you, James. He doubled my budget and he said, but there's a condition. And I said, okay. He said, I want you to open up this conference to other British PAs, our clients, our candidates, anyone that's interested in seeing what you do and what this group does at Haze, and help them. He said, because Vic, we're not the only people that are struggling profit-wise in a recession. Lots of others are as well. So get this out there. I was already starting to speak on it. Yeah, it was his idea. I'd never take credit for that because it didn't enter my mind. I was just so on the internal stuff, but I could see the effect of it.
And the invitations from other companies came right away.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just ballpark, between when you started and when you finished at Haze, about how many companies did you go in and speak to them about internal networks?
I have lost count. It's definitely over 100. Yeah, all different sectors.
And you were traveling not only in the UK either.
But that was another extraordinary thing to happen as well. Because obviously Haze is a global company and other people will pick up our PR. We were getting requests from around the world. And my bosses were great. James was like, yeah, go. Because actually, the way PAs work now, thanks to technology, I can do my job anywhere in the world.
Right. So how many countries did you go to?
Singapore, Russia, I've lost count. The USA I was in.
You should count one of these days.
Europe. I've got a scrapbook with it all in and pictures from every single country I've been to.
From a germ of an idea.
Yeah.
To now you're traveling the world, and you've doubled the budget, and it just snowballed.
It did, and it was really good for us as well. James said another interesting thing. He said, you know what, if you open up this conference, he said, it's just going to open everyone's minds up, to Haze, and actually, recruiters aren't always seen in the best light, and people say that we're aggressive salespeople, but actually we wanted to show a softer side to Haze, and we could do that via the PAs because we didn't have that aggressive nature in us by nature of the job, I guess. But we could also articulate Haze's brand values and everything we stood for at Haze. I trained the peers on how to get out there and stand for all that, and that really helped as well. So people were warming to us using
Haze where they might not have done before. When we invited external PAs to our conference, everybody was like, "Oh, Haze is putting on this big conference and it's free to attend." One of the things we wanted to do was not charge for it, and the reason we didn't is because we wanted, as a corporate company, to acknowledge that so many of our clients, the profit line was dropping. And look, we know you haven't got budget. Why don't you send your PAs? If this is all they can get out for all year, then just give them this, let them come along and learn with us. And it was great for the Haze PAs because I said, look, you've been taught how to network, you know how to be a brand ambassador. So you can sit there with other PAs, learn, but also you're promoting our brand the whole time and what we stand for and what we do. And it was really lovely. The conference snowballed year after year, as you know, Bonnie. Yes. In 2012, we started to bring over international speakers, and you were our first one. We wanted to show British PAs, actually there's a huge international platform, but our Prime Minister at the time, and he still is now, David Cameron, had said that in the press very publicly, UK businesses have got to do more to be on an international platform. We want to do more business internationally. We've got to, mix with other cultures and stuff. So I read this big article and I was like, yeah, actually he is right on that. And he said something really interesting then as well. We need to pack our planes, British Airways planes, with executives and get them out there. And I tweeted him saying, yeah, we do, but we need to make sure the PAs go along with them. So, yeah, it was extraordinary. And actually, at first, when I was asked to present abroad on internal networks, I was thinking, well, we're very British, we've got our own culture, is this going to resonate? But actually, I said, look, this is just a framework of what we do. This is what you can take as a framework and then mould it into what's appropriate for your company and your culture. So you might want to pick that idea of using lunch and learns and a web directory and events calendar, or you might want to do something slightly different. It's a template for you. It's right. Better than a blank sheet. Right. And that's how I went out to present about it, never forcing our network on anyone, just saying use whatever ideas you need to. And then, sort of take it from there. I had the business case template I used for James with the sorts of statistics HR like to see and know about. And again, I said to companies, you use and mould it into your own company culture and lingo and wording.
So we'll be, I know you're so generous in sharing this information, and that so assistants around the world, whoever, to our listeners, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to begin from nothing. No. Because now at least, you've paved the way and other companies have done this. So Vicky and I have contacts, but if you're looking at this on the website, there will be links for how to reach Vic. Yeah. But tell us what has happened next. What is the latest, this exciting news?
Well, a couple of years ago, we lost one of our fantastic national associations for the UK, EPAA. And it was like a real breadline for us. It was, an association, a professional body for us. It was fantastic, and we lost it, and due to the owner's ill health. And after that, we had a bit of a blip in the UK. Where do we go from here? And I decided to write a blog on what a new association could look like. Did we really need it? So I asked the question in the blog to UK PAs. Did we really need it? And if so, how was it going to be run in the future? And I actually said in my blog, I do think it needs to be a former EA. We've got to have people that have actually done the role now, because it's changed at such a quick pace and it's evoluting all the time, that it had to be a PA that had that sound understanding. Now, actually, at that point, I didn't think it would be me. In my blog, I did put, if anyone wants to come forward, you'll have my full support. Please make yourself known. But what happened with that blog is I had over 300 emails, not just nationally, but from across the world. And I had quite a few from Australia saying, you've got to do it.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, right. And I'd never seen myself as a businesswoman. And I had a chat with my now fiance, and he said, well, you have been supporting CEOs and very senior directors. Why can't you transition to businesswoman? Because you probably know all this stuff anyway, or at least a large part of it. I think there was some confidence issues on my part. And so I thought, okay, I'll do this, but we've got to do some extensive research. I'll have a go. But I wanted to phase my exit out of Haze appropriately. I was totally in love with the company, and it was quite hard to detach from the brand and everything I stood for at Haze. So I had an honest conversation with my bosses and said, look, guys, I think I'm going to leave in the next 2 years, and this is what I'm going to go on to do. I was very lucky that I had that relationship within Haze to have those discussions. But you know, one of my bosses said to me, "You were born to do this." He said, "Perhaps you should have done it years ago, but I didn't want to let you go."
So tell us about
Vicky and I feel that way
yes,
too.
Exactly. Yes. This is your calling for sure. So tell everybody about the association.
So I set up EPAA, the Executive and Personal Assistants Association. We registered the company in the UK in December 2014, but I didn't want to just launch it, you know, without having, as I said, done extensive research, really finding out, okay, what do you want? What's value for money when you're paying your member subs? And so I did focus groups on a Saturday. I'm very lucky because of the relationships I hold with thousands of assistants across the UK that they came off their own back on a weekend down to London on multiple occasions. We had a CEO of another PLC company to come and use our boardroom. So we're sat outside St Paul's Cathedral as our view, plotting and planning this extraordinary association. And
You're not just lucky, Vic. You worked really hard for this.
Yeah. But I always feel lucky
these
to
relationships.
know, yeah, just to know these people. And I invited my dad along on the day. I said, "Could you just record some notes, because I think a lot's going to come out of this first focus group." And at the end of it, he said to me, "Are you sure these women aren't CEOs themselves?" He said, "Because that's how they speak. And that's how they've presented themselves today." And I said, "Well, Dad, it's just the new PA role. This is what we are now. This is the role." And we just sat there. I couldn't sleep for 24 hours after that focus group. My mind felt like it was going to explode with the amount of ideas. And I knew then we had a game changer. We really had a game changer. I knew what needed to be done. I knew the negativities that have to be tackled within the industry and for our profession. And so we set about setting it up. We started telling people after about 8 months of waiting for someone to come forward. I then put out a blog saying, "Okay, I'm going to do it now. Okay, so this is what it's called. We've registered it. I am leaving Haze within the next 18 months, and with their support, and this is what I'm going on to do." So I left Haze in December 2015. We had a big event launch in January 2016 in London.
How many came?
We were expecting maybe about 80 to 100, but 200 people came.
to your launch party.
Yeah, and it was
Great.
a party.
Yeah.
It really was.
Didn't you say it went like till
2 o'clock in the morning, yeah. And normally with events in the UK, they tend to maybe end around 9, 10 p.m. This was a very, very late night.
Wait, when did it start? What time did it start?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock until 2. And so it's supposed to be like from 6 to 10 or something?
Yeah, 6 to about 9.
6 to 9, it went from 6 to 2.
Yeah, and it was really cool. It gave me the chance to pitch everything I had to condense 90 pages of writing of all the ideas that came from the focus groups. I had to condense that into a PowerPoint presentation to give them the top level, literally over a few pages. Okay, this is what we're going to do, this is what your benefits are going to be, these are the costs. We've looked at every single association in the country for every profession. We knew actually as a profession we wasn't doing half of what other industries were doing for their professions. And I said, look, we've got a lot of work to do, but it's fine. And one of the things that the assistants needed to know, that I had confidence and that also I have a big mouth to shout loudly, you know, where I need to, because we've got to have some difficult conversations, you know, about this pay and training and development and having to beg for budget. It's a derogatory position to be in as an assistant. We shouldn't be here after all these years,
Right.
but we are, and it's fine. And I said on the night, we've got to look at this in a positive way. And we are going to get that budget. Things are fundamentally going to change with this association.
So what's the mission of the organisation?
Well, it's to champion, develop and promote the profession every step of the way, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
For corporate, for corporations, for government, or like
Everyone.
for media? Everyone.
In the UK.
In the UK.
Yeah, we've got an international membership as well. We do know that my predecessor had one, and that actually a lot of international peers wanted to belong to a UK body as well. So the international side of it, that yes, they may not be able to get over for our events, but they'll have access to all our content and everything we do online.
Just for our international listeners,
Yeah.
how much would membership be?
So it's £50 per year, 50 British sterling per year. So that it's one of the cheapest memberships to take into account the fact you're not going to be with us at all the events in the UK.
Yeah, and the benefit of it is, especially if they have an office, so if it's an international company, they have an office in the UK,
Yeah.
that would benefit them from.
I mean, if you're a PA in the States and your boss does a lot of business in the UK, it's a real great gateway for you,
Yeah.
because at your fingertips you'll have every answer you need to know about their travel, anything really about the UK in terms of your boss staying there or your company coming over for a conference.
So what's the vehicle? Is it the website that people log into, or is
Yeah.
it going to be a Facebook page that is a closed group?
Or
that
email
people-
list.
So we've got a closed LinkedIn group, we've got a closed Facebook group, and we've got our website, which is still in a lot of development at the moment, but they can log into our website,
Which is
www.epaa.org.uk. So we're a not-for-profit association.
We'll have
Again,
the link, obviously,
Yeah.
on the website.
but it's there, and more importantly for international PAs as well. I know that London is probably in the top 3 or 4 cities that people want to work in, and other UK cities now as well. So if you are an international PA and you want to move to the UK and come and do some work in London and expand your career with us, then we can help you settle in, facilitate, get you a mentor, a UK mentor to help. Because I know it's really daunting actually moving to another country, but we can be there to support you, give you advice about visas and things like that, and
I love it.
mould you into everything British.
You know, in the workplace of 2016 and looking beyond, it seems to me as we travel that the world is just getting smaller and smaller, and that assistants everywhere are working globally.
Yeah, they are.
They have that need. And so to have at the click of a button access to international PAs is brilliant, because you may not need it today,
Yeah.
but next week or next month could be a whole different story.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's the point of it. You don't know when you will need it, but if you've got it there, then it will get you, that problem solved quicker. The answer is the key question you had, and and as I said, having international peers that want to move over, we'll be there to support them every step of the way, so that they have a smooth transition into our country. And understand our culture.
Well, I mean, we do business here, in the UK, so our assistants should be members.
Yes.
I'm happy to pay for my assistant to be a member of the organization.
Absolutely.
It makes sense.
It totally makes sense. So, Vic, what else is important for us to know about internal networks, the importance of associations? Like, what's burning for you, that you're seeing that's coming down the track in this next year?
Okay, so on the association side, I know that the UK PAs in particular, and I'm sure some other international PAs feel like this as well, but we've had over 200 articles out in the UK in the last year about the extension of our role because of technology. So they're really, some of them are getting a bit frightened, is technology really going to take it all away from us? And actually, by having an association that's going out there day in, day out, putting out the word, really explaining what the role is, and actually, no, we're not going to be replaced by robots, it gives them a sense of belonging and confidence to go out there and articulate all the messages we're giving them. It is a sense of belonging for an association. I've been saying to all our new members who've joined this week, use those letters after your name on your email signatures. Use them, because people ask what they're about. When I send your membership certificate out, we've put it in a frame, put it up on the wall in your office. Tell people you belong to something, you belong to a profession. It's really important to me that assistants understand they are part of a profession. We're not just PAs. We've got this whole
It's
skill
not
set.
just a job.
No, it's this huge skill set and repertoire, and actually, as I said at the launch, we could make a few other professions extinct with our skill set now. Thank you very much. And that's part of the association to grow, and I made some pretty big promises to them, but I think we'll be able to deliver them in the coming years. Rome wasn't built in a day. But we will definitely get out there and have the conversations that we need to. Something funny I did mention in my speech was that I've been trying to get into lots of CEO events in the last year. When I changed my job title on LinkedIn to CEO, I'm now getting invited to all these events, so I can go directly to CEOs and talk to them at networking events and tell them, well, actually, I'm a former assistant, and this is what we do. This is who I'm CEO of this company. Get your PA to join. So I can articulate that message out directly to the CEO and HR now, and sort of break down those barriers. And I think I can do that. I've been around some great leaders who've taught me well, and that's the art of being a great PA, is having that great partnership, and they have taught me well, and they're always there for me now. We don't know.
Yeah.
And the internal networks, I think it's only going to get bigger for the future. I think more companies have to do it. There's so many case studies out there now from every single sector, so it doesn't matter if you're not in a corporate company and you're only in a small charity or a public sector government body. It's really, really important. It really is. It does change lives. You're stronger together as a group, and you can change the perception within your company as a group. You can't do that as an individual, but you can do it as a group, and I think that's probably one of the key things for assistants is they want that better perception and understanding of the role. But when you all get together, you can change lives and your own as well.
So one of the traditions we have at this podcast is that we ask you one of your favorite quotes. Is there something that comes to mind?
Oh God, I can't remember it word for word. It's actually Richard Branson. He brought out a quote not that long ago, basically saying that he couldn't live without his assistants, which we know anyway. But he said, I actually believe, and this is not word for word, I'd have to look it up. But he was saying basically, I actually believe that some assistants are actually more efficient and could be better at the jobs than their own bosses, sort of thing. If it makes sense. Yeah. And I read that, and I remember sitting there thinking, do you know what, Sir Richard? Yeah, you're right. Some PAs know more than their bosses. That's how much knowledge they have.
Yes.
That if their boss broke his leg or something happened to them, they could probably step in for the day and do the job.
And many have. We've met many of them.
Right.
Yeah. Indeed, we have.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for, first of all, seeing your career, because we've known you for 3-4 years now, and seeing where you were back then and now where you are. It's such a logical step for you, and we have full confidence that you're going to be really successful with the organization.
Thank you. And so I have my own PA now, so I'm learning how to be a great boss, and hopefully she's learning from one of the best. But it's a great transition for me at the right time, and now I'm given this opportunity to a young lady who's stepped in to be my assistant, and I'm able to share everything I've learned since the age of 12 and making that declaration that I wanted to be a PA. And I can pass that all on to her, and there's nothing more rewarding than that.
Indeed. We need to pay it forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
And secondly, thank you for being our first on-location podcast guest.
Ooh, am I the first? I'm glad you didn't tell me that.
I know we've done interviews that we will incorporate into some of the episodes, but this was our first episode on location where we did the full episode. So thank you, listeners, for being patient with us as we deal with the noise.
But you now know why we wanted to do this, and so thank you, Vic, for what you're doing. I think EPAA is going to be wildly successful. I know it is,
no doubt.
And I know it's going to take twists and turns, but Vicki and I will help you in any way we can.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very honoured. Thank you.
Well, this concludes today's episode of the podcast. Be sure to email us your feedback or questions or podcast ideas to betheultimateassistant.com/podcast. Thank you once again to our guest, Vic Darragh. And that concludes today's episode.